Welcome to the Fed Paddle and Paddle Committee, 3PC otherwise known. We'll start with welcome and introductions.
Welcome. Mitch Barlogan, Nursing.
Flora Baum, Nursing.
Craig Zietsch, for Lake County Parks.
Jan Dick, Development Pathways.
Shan Neeson, Michigan City Parks.
Dean Button, City of Hammond.
Dustin Anderson, Town Administrator.
Kevin Lee, Nursing.
Tom Vanderwood, Nursing.
And Andrew Karras, Crown Point. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. We should have done first.
That's okay.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 27th meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion to approve the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, we'll move right into PED.
Yes, you lucky people. All right, let's get this going. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for being here on such a beautiful day. I really appreciate it. We all do. So, if you haven't noticed of late, we've been doing some planning because it is in our name. And just last month, we approved our 2050 Plus plan, which of course is the successor to our 2050 plan. And this is what we do every few years, is this long-range planning effort. So what I want to do is kind of go over some of the active transportation components of the plan and let you know what we have in store for the balance of the plan going forward and how we're going to try to promote this. If you haven't taken a look at the plan yet, I hope you do. A lot of good stuff in there, not only active transportation, but so many other different topics that we cover here at NERC, from land use to environment to transit and so forth. Of course, this being one of the core issues, being our trails, but trails are always good and always fun and easy to plan for. The big focus of this plan, however, was kind of getting off the trail itself. We've had great success with trail development, there's no doubt about it. This map on the wall, if you can take a look at the light blue color, that is pretty much, or your blue color, that is your core route. Those are trails that are in, and it's now our job to connect different segments of the region to that core network. And those come up kind of in a darker green color. And so we'll continue to do that. We continue to do it successfully. We have 26 corridors that are identified on this map up there. And so we have quite a bit of work to do in the region. So one thing that we've always had is plenty of trail projects going forward, and we do have people in this room that have used our money successfully, and hopefully will continue to do so as we move ahead. So going into the details, and I know these are not the easiest slides to read, but what I wanted to emphasize are the variety of different infrastructure enhancements that a community can invest in and look at. And I know all of you know these things. People in this room are very familiar with it and have actually implemented many of these in your communities. But we have to bring them to bear for other communities that haven't thought it through. What you see here are different ideas regarding bicycle boulevards and bike lanes and green bike lanes and neighborhood streets. And what we did was pretty much get a public survey out there and how people perceive these different infrastructure improvements and how you can maybe bring it into the dialogue with your own community regarding some of these on-road routes that we're trying to establish here. Of course, we have the buffered bike lanes, the calm street or street calming or traffic calming, otherwise known as. Off-street separated lanes, we have side paths. People are very familiar with those. Side paths, I call them side trails, but you got to be careful with them in certain areas because if you have a lot of driveway cuts, they are unsafe. And then you get into other ones as well. We have the side path, and we have two different types of side paths here that are talked about as options. Cycle track, which, as you can see, has a very good positivity score. That's pretty much a trail within a road corridor. So you've seen that before. I think the most, I don't know if there is we have a cycle track now in Miller. I don't know if, is Hammond installing one, part of the Holman? No? Okay. So a cycle track, yeah, you just kind of drop in a two-way trail right in the middle of your road corridor or onto the side of your road corridor. And of course, that takes into account any kind of driveway cuts to be safe with. The very one on the right is called the Woolnerf, and we probably won't see those in our lifetime. Those are in Netherlands. That's where you actually have a road that is now pretty much open to anybody, cars, pedestrians, bikes. I think the idea scares most people around here, but again, Europe is a different animal altogether. But again, talk about traffic calming. If you enter a roadway corridor and it's populated with people and bikes, it kind of will slow down. But anyway, the cycle track and especially side paths are things that we want to kind of focus on going forward. And we take the time to break down in these charts the different types of road typologies that are in existence pretty much anywhere throughout any region, anywhere in the country, so people don't have an excuse. And we talk about them from the country, the rural areas. We get into principal arterials. We talk about even larger urban areas. We get into tighter urban fabrics as well. We even get into trails and how to approach them as well. What we try to do with this chart is talk about that particular area, the characteristics of that area, what you can actually apply to that area from an infrastructure perspective. If I take a look here at major arterials, which is the second to the last one from the bottom, trails I think speak for themselves. But you talk about characteristics, it talks about urban, multi-lane, sometimes with medians, high volume, of course. And what will you design? What kind of treatment are you going to put in a major arterial? The recommendations, shared use side paths, special treatment at driveway and street intersections, advisory signage, wayfinding, on and on and on. Hello, George. So we're trying to do our best to help people understand what road typologies are out there and what can be applied to make it work. And then we get into the types as well. It gets into a bit more enhancements regarding the routes, the boulevards, enhanced bike lanes, protected bike lanes, and so forth. Gets into the details on how these are applied specifically in particular areas. As I go back there, you got 7 of them that are pretty commonplace that have been applied to in the United States. As examples, you don't have a Woolnerf here, by the way. But where we had preference surveys originally, now we kind of get into the gross details of how these can be applied in a particular community. And so after we kind of inundate the reader with all of these different options, with all of this different infrastructure, pretty much a menu of infrastructure ideas, then we kind of talk about what active network we have put on the ground. So you saw the trail map. This is the new map that we're going to try to apply going forward in NERC, making sure that people can get around their region, not only by trail, but also by roadways. Everything you see there in the red are roadways that have been outlined in detail for different treatments for non-motorized infrastructure. And there are charts galore. I think there's maybe about 45 to 50 charts because there's about as many routes on there on this map that we want to break down nearly segment by segment to give each community ideas on how they can improve them when they're improving those roadways. Now, they can improve those roadways at any time. Obviously, you have resurfacing, and if you're talking about just a matter of striping, you can put in bike lanes. Of course, if you're going to be reconstructing roadways, you want to consider other ideas as well, such as side paths, possible cycle tracks, and the like, okay? And so we have taken the time to do this. We have, for far too long, for good reason, we only have a staff of 1, don't forget. We have a lot of trails to work with in this region. We have a lot of abandoned corridors, and we've been able to build those out very well. Now we want to start working on the roadways. The example I always use is the fact that our trails are non-motorized superhighways. You will not use I-65 to go straight to your house, okay? You have to get off I-65, then you have to get off Route 30, then you have to get off that and you're finally in your driveway. The same thing applies to the non-motorized network. It does not get nearly as much respect, but most people are not on trails. Most people are on our roadways. They're either walking or biking, and you find them. And you find them in probably the most awkward of situations. And you're always telling yourself, why in the hell would they ever be on this roadway? Pardon my French. But you're right. Why would they be out there? They're out there because you have all sorts of land uses within those corridors that people need to access. Okay? Route 30 is a classic example. How many people see people walking or using a bike on Route 30? You see this. Walking a lot of times, okay? And they have to. People don't have cars. So they'll have to take public transportation as far as it'll take them. They get dropped off, and then they got to create their own way. Desire lines is what you call them. And you see them not only on the major arterials, you'll see them on other arterials, minor arterials as well, where sidewalks are not there. And people you think are taking their lives in their hands, they're just trying to live the next day for the most part. They use a bike to get to work and get home. They have to walk to do this. We want to make sure that network is comfortable for them to do that. People always ask, no one over bike or walk there. Of course, not now, but that's why you have to plan for it. And the more you plan for it, the more it'll happen. Just as a side note to this, I looked at an article the other day that was flying around LinkedIn about the amount of use they get in Calgary during wintertime. And it's pretty stunning. And Calgary is not warm in the wintertime. You know, if we talk about it being cold in Chicago, Calgary is a couple of degrees higher than or lower than us during that time frame. And yet they have a very robust user pool in the wintertime because, again, the infrastructure is there, is taken care of, it's predictable, and people know how to use it and get around safely. So, yes, weather is an issue, but also just having the facilities there, the facilities are safe, the facilities are maintained. That's what we're trying to promote in this region. So, as we're going through this, we have no less than 48 routes. I was close. 48 routes in this region. I'm going to show you a blow-up of it right now of a particular area here in Northwest Indiana. I did this previously. You're going to see this a lot with our 2050 outreach. We're doing a lot of repetition. We know we have a very thick document. It's over 500 pages. We're dealing with 7 or 6 primary focus areas. That is a lot for the average person to figure out. So we're going to be coming to you constantly with these parts of the plan so you get to understand where we're coming from. A lot of colors going on here. Let me just focus you on that. Now, this is a corridor that includes different types of transportation networks, either roadways or trails. And it's a connection here from the town of Munster all the way into Chesterton. So we consider these different routes, and I know we have Dustin here from Munster as an example, but we talk about Main Street quite heavily here as a possible, and I know you're looking to do that too in Munster, and trying to get a side path on Munster, and trying to use Main Street as a way of getting people out to the east, going into Porter County eventually. And we're trying to do this segment by segment. I'm just going to highlight one. The very top, it says Main Street State Line to Munster City Line, which is Cypress Drive. Obviously, that's Munster. It is a minor arterial. It's 2.3 miles in length. We talk about the channel width there. We talk about the lane configuration. And then we talk about the right-of-way conditions there, the amount of traffic that's there. We talk about rating. We go into it as much as we possibly can, segment by segment. This is the value of bringing in an outside consultant to help us out. We brought an RDG out of Omaha, Nebraska. They worked with many of you. Marty Schukert worked with many of you on this when he had his public forums. And we sat down, we talked about these particular ideas, and he was able to flesh it out, something that we can't do at NERC. Okay, we cannot go route by route. So we're very excited about this, that we can actually give you this tool that you can use with your public works, with your council, with your executives, with whoever, and let them know that, hey, NERC is proposed. And of course, when you have the entire hierarchy of planning, right? I always say this, and I mean this, and until I'm taken off my ledge, I will stay on it. If your comprehensive plan makes a mention of something, you have all the legal right to incorporate that into your zoning and subdivision laws. It's a very powerful document that way. Many communities don't understand that. They just approve these plans, and then they don't really link it with their other documents. The same is true for our 2050 plan. Your comprehensive plan now has the strength to incorporate this because it has been done regionally. That is a legal strength that you have, that we have proposed it at this level. You can bring it into your comprehensive plan now with a lot more justification, and that will hopefully trickle down into your other ordinance documents. This has been very successful with us over the years with our trail development. We've created our network plan. Communities have said, wow, we love this, we're doing it, and we're going. So the same thing is going to hopefully apply, that we're going to try to advise and inspire all of you to do, because that's all we can do. We cannot hold this over you. We believe that these practical tools will be very helpful for you going forward as you plan your capital improvement programs and so forth. Make sure these roadways can adhere as much as possible to these concepts. Another one to talk about in a much less populated area here in, I believe, in LaPorte County, a route, I believe, from Munster to the city of LaPorte. There it is in blue. This is pretty much all within the state roadway there, some other routes as well. You can see a heck of a lot more invested. Of course, the one that I talked about previously, we talked about Main Street that connects eventually up to the Oak Savannah Trail in Griffith, and that just shoots you right into Chesterton. Okay, we got contiguous trails all the way to Chesterton pretty much. Not so much here, Valpo to LaPorte, but we want to make sure it's as safe as possible. We want to make sure that these ideas, again, segment by segment by segment by segment, gets into the right hands, the highway departments and the like, to make sure these improvements are made. So, I hope that has made some sense to you, short of actually having a 2-hour workshop on each of these routes, okay? But that is what we hope to do. I just want to let you know how we go about promoting this plan, okay? Obviously, we have our, low-hanging fruit with social medias and the constant contacts and what have you, and we're going to be making that happen. We are more than happy to make a presentation before any of your boards, and we don't care what it is. You have a plan? Yeah, thank you, Jim. Plan commission, council. Obviously, the more pragmatic the board, I think the more the impact. If we do talk to maybe Board of Public Works, or if we talk to plan commissions or BZAs or what have you, that probably have a better impact than dealing with the council. But again, we will leave that to your discretion. We'll do municipal boards, civic groups, chambers of commerce, elementary schools, doesn't matter. We'll go there, okay? So if you have ideas for us to talk before, we will try to make this work at those levels. Again, we'll continue to highlight this. It is our intention at every TPC, our technical planning meetings going forward, to highlight a chapter of this plan and to make sure you understand different components of it. We're going to start with active transportation this month. It's alphabetical, okay? We'll get into climate the following month, and so on and so forth. And we're going to try to use this work of repetition to kind of get into everyone's mind about what we're trying to propose here. And then we have performance measuring, which is baked into this. Performance measures were first, I think, introduced in the Federal FAST Act. It's been carried on with the bipartisan infrastructure law, which got passed last year. So we want to make sure we continue with that and really enhance that as well for kind of keeping the public up to date on what we have proposed and what is being done. And then we have our NOFA 2024 rankings. I know we got Charles in the back here. Charles is Mr. NOFA, and I guess our next call will be 2024. But we want to keep in mind that communities that adhere to many of our policies and our plans could be rewarded in the rankings, okay? We have done this before and we'll continue to do it, especially when it comes to our non-motorized, our active transportation projects. We've known that in the past. If you ascribe to our plans, if you are doing different things like doing complete streets policies, and maybe even being a bicycle level community of some level or another. I know Valparaiso is in the bronze category. I think Hammond is in the bronze category. You're somewhere, but you're on the radar. That is all very helpful because that is showing progressive planning at your level, and that's another independent body verifying it, and that's very helpful for us. So keep that in mind, and we'll try to bake that in as well. I am done. So again, I appreciate your time, and it's not a one-way. We're not lecturing here. It's a dialogue. If you have ideas, let us know about how best to promote our plan. Please let us know. Like the new fall season on TV, we're going to roll this out pretty hard next month, tomorrow being next month. But within about a week or two, we're going to start doing social media blasts regarding different parts of the plan. Again, bite-sized, digestible nuggets of the plan. And maybe over the next year or two, all 500 pages will be absorbed by people in the region. So any questions that I can answer off the top of your head? Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mitch. We can move next to the Old Plank Road Trail Study.
The Old Plank Road. Okay, I'm going to tee up Dustin here while we're talking. So the Old Plank Road study, as you well know, is continuing to motor on. OPR study, I think it's OPRT, Old Plank Road Trail, oprtstudy.org is the main website for the plan. The Old Plank Road Trail, as you well know by now, I hope, is a trail, a 20-some mile trail in Illinois that stops in Chicago Heights and goes near to pretty much into Joliet, and we're trying to extend it from that point into Cherville at the Pensy Greenway. I believe we have a project, Charles, that goes from Cherville to Central Park that got approved in our last tip. I think it's in 27, if I'm not mistaken, but that's moving along. And that's going to take a little time because we have some railroad coordination to deal with, but I think we're getting closer on that. But we want to see that trail continue all the way in Illinois. Illinois has a lot more challenges. This is an abandoned Norfolk Southern track that is pretty much free and clear until you get to Chicago Heights. And then things get, as they say, wiggy. There is a steel mill that's in the middle of that, and so we're going to have to figure out ways to get around it. But the plan talks about alternatives, it talks about different strategies on getting the trail done, and of course how communities along that trail can take advantage of its location. Dyer, where I live now, stands to really benefit from it because it could possibly, be the trigger for a new downtown, and I think they've actually planned for that as well. So that's where it's going. Where the plan is, I believe we're looking to have public input sessions on the final document within the next month. There'll be one held in Cherville, and I believe a couple others in Illinois. So that's where that is right now.
Good. Any questions on Old Plank Trail? Now we'll move on to the paddle.
Dustin. So I'm going to just do a little intro here. I am proud to introduce Dustin Anderson. He is the town manager for Munster. How many years have you been there now, Dustin? 9 years. Boy, that flies by. Especially when you're doing projects, right? So Dustin has been a great partner working alongside, and they received a great grant that he'll talk about, a RAISE grant, that they're having a little bit better time with than we are. But that said, I'll let him talk about it a bit more. So Dustin, forward is that button right there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So I'm just going to talk broadly about the RAISE grant, because that's what Rich wanted me to do. You have questions. I think it's probably more useful to your time if you have questions about it. I can get in deep in the weeds if you want. Otherwise, I'm just going to go real broad strokes, right?
Sure.
Before, I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things that you mentioned, Rich. Locally, that we have resources that we can share as well in Munster. The proposed active network, where you here's where a street is, here's proposed some resources that your consultant proposed. We have a thing in town. I'm sure it happens in everybody's town, where the infrastructure was built around the car, right? So you got big, wide, 60-foot streets that are mostly straight or swooping turns, so you feel real comfortable driving fast. Most people don't like driving fast when they're walking their kids to school or across the street, right? At least that's what we're experiencing in town. There's been a shift in preference for transportation in a lot of our neighborhoods. So we have an interdisciplinary team called the SPEED team. It's basically all the department heads that touch the public: parks, public works, fire, police, and engineering, right? So we look at these proposed. I looked at the map, right? A lot of the places that we're looking overlay proposed active network, and I like your grid, right? And there might be more information. So we have some street typologies, which is a real fancy way of saying how to slow cars down and make it safe for people and bikes. So if you were interested in that, you can reach out to me. So we have a whole other presentation on that. Main Street, thanks for the call out on Main Street. We are in design right now for phase one. Phase one goes from Columbia Sheffield to Hart Ditch, because Hart Ditch was apparently the best place to stop that project in the middle. And we did not get funding for phase two, but we are going to try again to go from Hart Ditch to the Highland Town line. So we're going to give it a good college try. We do have an off-street 10-foot multi-use path. There'll be some green infrastructure in that, very safe to bike and walk and go. And Old Plank Road, we are working with the owners of the Lansing Country Club, formerly Lansing Country Club. We're going to extend the Pennsy Greenway up behind Pepsi, if you know where that is, right? So right now it kind of goes up along Calumet. Along Calumet is pretty ugly. So that trail is going to be built within probably the next, I hope, 18 to 24 months, so it will connect from the Canadian National line all the way up to the current alignment, which is at the intersection of Mannerholm and Timrick. Additionally, that development, we're in the process of negotiating that development agreement, and we're going to attempt to compel the developer to create trails on the Illinois side. So Lansing, who we've talked with, and Cook County Forest Preserve, who we've talked with, can take that trail from the Pennsy and go east along that common right of way to also get into the Cook County Forest Preserve, which will get you to the Plank Trail as well. So this project right here, I don't even recognize that map. So I'll take the long way around the barn. What are we looking at here? We're looking at Ridge Road from State Line to Columbia Avenue, the preferred alternative to the Gorman Expressway at the moment. So we did receive a RAISE grant from the Federal Department of Transportation. And how did we get there? Well, we got there because we changed our zoning code to a form-based use in 2019. So that's a lot of work, community outreach about what residents and businesses and stakeholders want to see on the private property side. What do you want the built environment to look like? Okay, that's a fair question. Well, that's a big deal, but what about our side of the street? What about the streets? So Tom, actually, thank you, Tom, had the idea and led the initiative to do a streetscape plan for those two main corridors, Calumet from the river down to Ridge Road and State Line to Columbia. That work was done with Sam Schwartz Engineering and Tesca Associates, and that produced a recommendation to give Ridge Road a road diet because it has about 16,000 cars a day and dropping when everybody doesn't get off the highway to take it to cut around the traffic. It's a great candidate for skiing and eating up. Right now it is 5 lanes across, which is the same alignment as Cicero as you're on your way to Midway. So I would say that that's probably not a consistent use to the resident desire of the town of Munster, right? Like, I just came from Midway, and it's ugly. That's the built environment that you get. You get 5 lanes of traffic. It's a sewer for cars. That's not consistent with the small town image that Munster has for itself. So, as luck would have it, this is all luck, really. I mean, the federal department appoints a bunch of people, and those bunch of people want to do active transportation, and they authorize through an act of Congress funding to do things like this. So we were lucky, right? We had a plan that town was forward-thinking enough to get done. We took it and we said, hey, here it is. So we got the email from Liz Johnson out of Congressman Levan's office saying, hey, here's a notice of funding. Take a look at it. Deadline was in about 45 days. So we hired Sam Schwartz to work on that application with us. So that wasn't free. Council, off credit to our council, they spent 16 grand and a chance to get 21 million, and it was about to pay it off. We were awarded that grant last September, and we have been working with the Indianapolis Office of the Federal Highway Administration and the Office of the Secretary of the Department of Transportation to kind of move that ball forward. It is like pushing a string sometimes, but we did get an executed grant last month. We did have our project kickoff yesterday with IEI Associates. BF and their project team includes BF&S, Terragon for geotechnical work, Dot Title, and Sam Schwartz as a consultant traffic engineer with Tesca doing public outreach. So they are going to kick off real fast and heavy, working on that section 106 of the UPA document, and we are looking to have that hit the NDOT letting schedule for September 24, which is wildly ambitious. But we'll see what happens. I think we can do it. We got this far. Why not go all the way? So that's kind of what we got. We got a 5-lane road, and we're turning it into something else. What does that something else look like? It is a common misperception, even in our own town, that we are going to go 1 lane center median with plants. That was a picture that was included in the initial streetscape report, and we all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words and 1,000,000 town manager essays on the subject saying something else. But, so this has caused a little bit of heartburn. We don't know what the intervention is going to be, right? Why would you hire an engineering firm to design something if you already know what it is? It is going to be a complete street, which means it's going to have adequate off-street infrastructure for bicyclists, pedestrians, anything multimodal, It's going to have significant stormwater management best practices, use of rain gardens, things like that. Right now, in this huge swath of road, 100% of the water goes into our storm drains, and if we're lucky, it goes up to the Great City of Hammond. If we're not so lucky, it pulls into a street, and if it's really not lucky, it goes into someone's basement. So we're going to cut that potential catastrophic outcome by 25%, which I think is a good deal for our residents. So what is it? Street infrastructure for pedestrians, cyclists, stormwater management, some trees. That's what it's going to be. There will be sections where it will be 3 lanes, right? 2 direction, 1 down the middle. There might be sections where it's going to be 4 lanes or even 5 lanes, right? We've got to look at those terrain analysis and build an intervention that meets the needs of our emergency services, right? Because with the closure of the hospital in Hammond, we get tons of ambulances coming from Cal City and all points north and west. So we don't want to really put beautiful things in the middle of the street because that slows the ambulances down. But we still can do a really great project with keeping those stakeholders happy. And yeah, here's a typical cross section, right? That might happen. You got your off-street multi-use path on the south side of Ridge Road. You got a travel lane, you got a center turn lane, you got another travel lane, and you'll probably have some kind of either street parking or rain garden and a way wider sidewalk for just pedestrian convenience, ease of travel, beautification, and stormwater management. So that's what I got.
Questions for
I have a
Dustin?
question.
Yeah.
So did your 21 million, is that covering all phases, design and engineering, right away, construction?
Not right away.
Not right away.
It will not cover right away. So right away is going to be out of our own pocket. There's about 16 parcels that extend to the middle of Ridge Road that we're going to have to deal with our own money. I mean, it is what it is, but I don't think it's going to be catastrophic. But yes, to everything else, it covers everything else.
And what's the timeline to use that money?
We have to have it obligated by 27.
Oh, so you have a big window.
Yeah. Obligated or completed by
I
27.
think completed is 30.
They changed it.
Ours is 29, and we got it in 21, so you
Okay.
should be a bit farther out.
All right.
Now, what does this project do in regards to Westlake? I mean, have you coordinated with NICD at all with all this?
Yeah, they asked us to stop working on it. So never done.
I've heard that before.
So the initial traffic study in, what was that, 2010, 21? That we did the streetscape, I think it was 2020. Yeah. They took the ridership model that NICD used for their full funded grant application and build in that trip generation into the trip generation for the Ridge Road corridor. So to the extent that we have accommodated that use, from a technical perspective for managing the automobile traffic, yeah, we've done that. I think that having a human-focused corridor at a kiss and ride station is probably a really great idea. So I think it would complement the use of Westlake. I mean, we were going to do this, Westlake or no. I think it's a good choice for any community if you have a street that is overbuilt to de-emphasize that maintenance obligation. It's just a huge maintenance obligation. A road is just a maintenance obligation, and you don't need all of it. Why keep paying for all of it? I don't know. So we would do this with or without Westlake. With Westlake, I think it's a really good fit. Like peanut butter honey, it's awesome, but they're also good to get good without each other. What else you got?
So Tuesday, we had a Surface Transportation Committee meeting.
Yes.
And they asked me to talk a little bit about our federal money that we received from Federal Railway for our bridge in Hessville. What we found is that we had a system that we were typically used to following the Indiana guideline for procurement consultants. Federal Highway has different ideas. Did you find that you had to go out, solicit an RFP for that, go through that whole process? And
Yeah, that's
met
a
the
good-
Federal Highway
That's a good
requirements?
question. They don't have any guidance or regulation, which I think, if you talk to a lot of direct recipients in this cohort, the RACE 2022, a lot of people are having a real hard time finding a way forward. What we've had success with is, and I think, again, it's just circumstance, we're lucky, right? The staff technical advisor for this at Federal Highway in Indianapolis is a former INDOT guy. So we're just using INDOT procurement, right? We're not using their form, we did, but we use something like it. So we don't have past INDOT practice, because past INDOT practice rewards you for being really good at building highways and bridges. This is kind of the opposite of that, but the same process, right? Here's the score sheet, so the RFP, here's the interview, here's how you'll be evaluated, here's the score sheets that are signed and dated, and that's been good so far. And I think because this is governed by 2 CFR 200, you really can write your own rules as long as you're comprehensive and consistent with applying your rules. It's like a unique special provision. Is it really a unique special provision if we've said it's a unique special provision in our standards for the road? So I'm not an engineer. That's about as deep as I can get, Dean.
Well, my point Tuesday, and what I'm trying to get for the group here is that the rules are changing for direct recipients from the USDOT, and communities, the local public agencies need to realize that those things are changing, and just to be prepared for that, because, we feel like we're sort of, we understand what has happened in the past, and the rules are changing for us. And so we're having to adapt to those, and I just want to let the other communities know that the same, to expect the same thing if they're looking for federal money, direct recipients.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, it's okay to steal something that works, because they're used to working within that, in that process. And if you can work your way into that, we've had some positive success. Even with the office of the secretary, who doesn't know nothing in that, right?
Yeah.
But federal highway staff are like, well, this really works. So they can advocate in good faith on our behalf interdepartmentally, like that whole federal turf war. We've had some success there.
So that's a question I had. You are direct recipient.
Yep.
The other thing I thought that came up at surface transportation, to Scott Weber's credit, he talked about loading zones sort of being something that people should think about in areas where, we're seeing these Amazon deliveries or other things that are mostly needed now, where we've sort of not focused on that. And I think you have opportunity to do that in certain areas if that applies, because you have some buffered area that could accommodate that.
For sure, whether it's on the south side of the street with the parking, or we're lucky that there's almost a continuous alley in the rear. So there's some, with some generous parking and big portions of that corridor there too. So yeah, we're lucky.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Congratulations on it, too.
Thanks.
I know.
Out there, trail counters.
So, there's many of you in the room that have received trail counters from us, and we're in the process of getting them all installed. We haven't finished them all yet, and it's just one of those things that we're trying to work out the kinks with. We are going to have quite a few of them, almost 30 of them installed throughout Northwest Indiana when it's all said and done. So we're still waiting to get them all online. We got most of them online, so we appreciate your assistance there. We're looking to hopefully purchase more counters next year. I know I was telling you this year, but now I'm lying. I'm saying next year. Budgets change, and the project is stretched a little longer than we thought. As usual, these inaugural initiatives do. We're doing a lot of inaugural initiatives, such as these trail counters. But the ones that we have in the field now are doing a great job, and very eye-opening. And thankfully, we don't have birds or wildlife skewing the numbers at this point. So
So we still have 3 to install.
I wasn't going to browbeat you, Dean.
I deserve it. I deserve it. Is there anything you've learned or anything that you just mentioned, we're not getting any wildlife or anything? Is there anything that you've learned to date that you could share with me before I put my trail counters out that I should know about?
Well, what have I learned? Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing, we're just trying to figure out the software interface on how you as a program manager will get your data and how you will be able to read your data. Right now, we're not sure how that happens. I mean, right now, when we get you acclimated with the software, you go out there with your crews and boop, get the information, but then what do you do with it? It comes to me, I as the overall manager can look at all this data, but you want to make sure the locals can look at your own data. Now, as for the installation, that's just a matter of letting me know where you want to put it. We work together. Obviously, we'd like to see it in a high traffic area.
For sure,
What's gonna
that's where our
matter.
plans are.
High visibility too would be best. And so yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
It does.
And I want to do a segue here, Mr. Chairman. We also, several of you in this room have purchased our trail signs over the years. And some of those trail signs are getting a little ruddy. The newer ones, of course, are spectacular, but, over time, I point back to you, Dean, because you have a particular kiosk there north of Norman that someone just took all the way off.
Yeah, and I talked to Scott Pruitt about getting it replaced because they were the project manager for that project. And so he's done some reach out to the vendor to get that replaced, to help us get it replaced.
So, and that's great, I'm glad Scott did. We do work with a vendor right now that's called Legacy Sign out of LaPorte County. They are the ones who have installed our latest signage that we've used other people's money with. It's always good to use other people's money. Legacy Foundation, Crown Point Foundation installed several signs in the Lake County area, and they use that same template of our unified wayfinding guide. And so they install them. So they have, I'll get that to you, and I'll get that to all the other managers, because we're going to have to figure out some adjustments, because the sign itself, I mean, again, when I met with all the park people before on it, everyone was like, the consultant rolled out some designs and everyone was like, okay, they're tearing that up day one. Okay, so we had to go back to the drawing board. We kept going back, and we finally found these monolithic things but unfortunately, they have a raised panel for the map, and so you just have your hand in there, and people have been tearing that off. And some of the placards are being picked off as well, so there has to be a way of possibly just either painting it on there, or maybe not having separate facilities, maybe having the map itself somehow installed into the actual, kiosk itself. Anyway, that's something we have to work with on these second and third generations. And of course, the maps are out of date. We have 2019 maps. We're going to have 2024 ones. We're going to put a new map out next year, by the way. So we want to make sure all these kiosks are up to date on it. So I'll get out an email to kind of get people all on the same boat with that, because I don't want you to install something that's out of date right away.
So while you're talking about signs, that was on my list today. Have we ever determined mile markers on the Marquette Greenway?
No, we haven't yet.
So I have money from redevelopment that I've got to get spent out.
I-
Sitting on it for 2 years.
The problem is, we're not even sure where the route is in some particular areas.
So my thoughts for Singing Sand is just to spend out this 30 grand on just the kiosks that you're talking about.
Well, we could have a kiosk, we could have a street sign, we'll talk about that. I can burn through your money like crazy if you want to. I have all sorts of great ideas. I mean,
Well,
the
The
unified,
election's in November, so I want this money spent out.
okay, you and I
prior
will
to
talk, yeah.
the
We can
reward
talk.
coming in, and then it could be gone.
No, the mile markers, we're gonna have to hold off on, because unfortunately, we're not sure where the route is just yet. Portage is rerouting and possibly East Chicago, so that's
So at
gonna,
least I can get 2 kiosks on.
you get kiosks, you can get street signage, you can get directional signage. Again, we can burn it up pretty quickly.
All right,
I'll talk
well,
to you.
let's get together sooner than later, because I really want to use that money.
I think what I can do is, if you're around tomorrow, we'll talk, how's that?
What's that?
You around tomorrow?
Friday, yes.
Okay.
No,
I'll be,
I'm changing my answer.
I'll be in touch, we'll be in touch.
All right.
So there you go, it took care of all sorts of stuff.
So, can you give us an update on, any updates on Market Greenway Trail?
Oh, boy. Marquette Greenway, here's Dustin sitting there with his raised grant all signed off, and I'm so jealous. We got some staff in the room. I'm co-manager with this project along with Charles Bransky and Tom Vanderwood as our superior, so he's involved. It's been an odyssey. It's been an absolute odyssey. When we first started this project, we received just over $17 million for 14 separate projects in 3 states. You can imagine the fun that was going to bring about. Problem is when we first got our funding, they took out most of our local match with the National Lakeshore. And it's like, oh, good, we're already behind the 8 ball. Anyway, that's just the start. And ever since then, this was in December of 21, by the way, and we're still trying to get the grant agreement executed. So the grant agreement starts everything up. We have Butler Fairman in the back of the room with Jake. They are kind of our project manager on this because we are direct recipients too, as Dustin is in Munster, and we don't know what to do. So we hired a group that does, that knows how to oversee the permitting and the engineering and basic environmental work. Anyway, it's hard to get a short answer, but I'll try my best. We're close on signing the grant agreement with the Department of the Secretary of Transportation. It didn't hurt that I actually talked to Pete yesterday when he was here at his visit at the Gary Chicago Airport and dropped it in his ear. And we actually had a meeting with the OST this afternoon about where we're going from here. So we hope that's an expedited process. We get that on board and we can finally start getting the work done soon. Our obligation deadline is September of next year. And we still have environmental review. I know Jake is like, this is not going to work. Anyway, we're hoping we get that extended. But at the same time, we got our ducks in order. We've got other projects moving along. The Calumet Trail, which is a major part of the Marquette Greenway, is supposed to be finished by the end of next year, finally. So all 3 of those phases are going to fire up. We're trying to get Burns Harbor with Next Level Trail. So we're trying our best. It's just not a straightforward route, and it hasn't been from the start. But as soon as we get the grant agreement signed, we're going to start going public with progress reports. But we've been very hesitant to do that without the grant agreement signed, because it's like, oh, what's happened? Why did you lose $17 million? I don't want to be that person. So we're getting close. And we've got people like, we've got Shannon who's in the middle of this project with us, and Dean is doing his job in Hammond, and so a lot of people, of course, Craig's working with us in some parts, but yeah, we're getting it done.
Okay, good to know. I guess I get asked that a lot, so.
No,
One other thing that I'm asked a lot, if you don't mind, is the C&O behind the mall that goes from Maryville. Isn't that supposed to connect west?
update us, Craig, on the C&O.
No, I was going to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, large portion of the C&O, from Yoke Savannah at Oak Ridge Prairie, to where Maryville picks it up, just west of Hendricks. Milestone's working on that, and I believe they've got the binder down and the finish coat, and I think they're starting on concrete work. Our crew's gonna be putting in some shelter, bench, tables, etc. And then they'll be putting in fencing and then the finished details. But yeah, I think we're looking pretty good on our end, and Jake can probably update maybe on the Maryville portion. But
What about it, Jake?
It's the same thing, they got a bridge there, yeah, I haven't been through the actual construction site for a couple of weeks now, but it won't be much different than the county site. Both of those will open later on this year, so look forward to some ribbon cuttings there, and that great connection that will now allow the C&O to connect to the Oak Savannah and beyond.
Oh, I bet there's more cookies over there. Just so everyone knows what we're talking about, the C&O is right now it's an independent trail right through Maryville. Starts at Taft and goes all the way to South Lake Mall. This trail project is connecting from Taft all the way to the Oak Ridge Prairie. It's like 2 miles, 3 miles?
Up to the middle of
So it's kind of 2 projects, one headed up by Lake County Parks, the other one by the town of Maryville. They're being done concurrently. And when it's done, which will be, as he says, within the month here with all the details, you have now a grand confluence at the Oak Ridge Prairie with Erie Lac, Oak Savannah, and C&O right there for everyone to access in one spot. So we're going to play that up quite heavily too in the next month. So good news on that. So there you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, anything else?
Next level trail funded projects.
What was that?
Those are both funded from next level.
Oh, they're both next, yeah, exactly. Gotta love it.
Thank you. Anything else for pedal? Then we'll move on to paddle.
Anybody here from the Paddling Association? Well, the water trails are still there. Nothing's dried up since I last checked, so. That's all I got.
We'll keep that on the agenda.
Thank you.
Grab bag.
I have one announcement, and I didn't make this clear, and I should have been a lot more clear about it. I wear another hat with the Greenways Foundation of Indiana. We're partnering with the Indiana Parks and Rec Association. We have a Trails Gathering event next month in Goshen, Indiana, from the 28th, I think the 28th and 29th. And you can register at the IPRA website. It is a seminar plus a tour of the Pumpkin Vine Nature Trail from Goshen to Middlebury and possibly Shipshewana. So we have done these trail gatherings in the past where they're just kind of one day and that's it, but now we're actually incorporating a bike ride into it, so hope you can join us in Goshen. I think I'll get that out maybe through constant contact to the group as well, but we have that on our social media, so hope you can join us.
Great. Project updates?
We've had the CNO, but anything with the Singing Sands update? No? Yes?
Yeah, a couple of things.
Okay, go ahead.
So the Michigan City Park Board next week is going to approve a request to our Board of Works to terminate the Amtrak's license agreement.
Whoa.
We're done with Amtrak. And then we'll send them a demand letter. We want our money back for the designs that we still have not gotten 5 years later, which caused a loss of funding. So that's in the works. I'm sure there's going to be some repercussions as we try to cross Amtrak again with the next phase of Singing Sands, but we may just terminate the trail on either side again. They have been impossible to work with. You know, they wanted the safe crossing. They preached safe crossing. We did our work. We did our part. We got the funding, and actually, our next license payment is due tomorrow, so we're just pulling out. We're buying Amtrak.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
And then this morning, I sit on the Chessie Trail stakeholder group in LaPorte. So they're wrapping up the preliminary design of that trail from LaPorte to Michigan City. They did ask me to invite you to attend the last meeting. It's on October 4th. The big change there is they did have a raise grant for this segment, and Mayor Dermody has switched gears now, and he's using that $7 million for housing in LaPorte. So we're going to be seeking funding sources. This is a huge segment. It's going to be very difficult, crossing a lot of highways, a lot of railroads. It's going to be very, very expensive. But Michigan City segment is going to be fairly easy, so it's my hope that, you know, this group is really focusing on starting for Michigan City and going to LaPorte, so that benefits us, and we have some really good connections, easy ways to get connected to Singing Sands in our portion. So if you can make it on the 4th, that would be great.
Okay.
And then on June 21st, someone set fire to the Peanut Bridge from Singing Sands Trail. It was covered by insurance and it reopened yesterday. But I was shocked at the amount of phone calls I got of users. I really didn't think the trail was that heavily used, but I mean, it was all day, every day. Why is the trail closed? Why do we have to go around?
That's good.
So yeah, good news is the bridge is open. And they set it on fire from underneath.
Well, that's interesting.
It was just,
So someone was coming out of canoe, they said like that, wow.
I'm guessing that they put some type of an accelerant on there and used a torch. So it burned from the railroad tie base up through the subdecking, up to the upper decking.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, so when you looked at the top, it only looked like about 15, 20 feet of damage, but from underneath it was like 50. So, yeah,
They didn't catch-
$35,000
They
to
didn't catch anybody.
Now, the fire report says, source of fire unknown,
Okay.
which is ridiculous. It's arson. It's clearly arson.
Yeah, you don't catch fire in the bridge or water.
Underneath. Our fire department.
We're fire department, what about the state fire?
Yeah, I forgot about that too. I mean, at this point, the insurance covered it and it's fixed, but
So let me go back to Chessie. You know that I am trying to put some interest together for Michigan City South Bend.
yes.
So that's gonna hopefully rise up soon because.
Now, that's along the South Shore corridor.
South Shore Nipsco corridor. and-
That's what's being discussed on the 4th.
Okay,
I
well, by
believe-
then we should have a meeting. If my bandwidth allows, the idea is to get enough support for a raise grant.
Okay.
The next raise grant, that would go between those two cities.
That was brought up.
While
this
Pete
morning
Buttigieg
to
is
me.
still in office, we would like to go to his backyard.
What's that?
While Pete Buttigieg is still in office,
Oh,
we'd
right.
like to go to his backyard.
Yeah.
So,
No, I mean, that's really smart.
it is, you know, hey Pete, look. So anyway, but obviously you're gonna be in the middle of those meetings as well as the port officials, the signature officials and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, so that came up this morning at the meeting, and I told them that I would be here and I would invite you to come on the 4th, because that's their last wrap up, the preliminary.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other project updates? Any other upcoming events?
I have an event. We're having our Creekness Stakes canoe race on Saturday, September 23rd. We're selling half boats for $500, full boats for $1,000. We have a team of up to 9 paddlers with a professional guide. This is a fundraiser for Trail Creek Week, which is an environmental outdoor classroom that we hold. There's also Kankakee Days is related to that. So I'm going to say about 3,000 students go through this education every year, but it's funded, Michigan City's part is funded by this race. So it's a good time. We have live music, great raffle prizes, craft beer from our local breweries.
Nice.
I think Mayor Perry and Mayor Germany are going to do a mayor challenge this year, so that'll be fun.
Okay.
Jake's got a boat this year.
Oh, Jake.
Super stoked.
Great.
We do a Team Spirit Award.
I'm gonna troll a fishing line off the back of it.
So we have an award for the winner of the race as well as Team Spirit. So I'm encouraging the boats to really do the Team Spirit because the parks won all 4 years in a row. Like we're tired of winning, but we're raunchy. Like
You're charged.
our idea is like last year, sanitary districts are a big competitor
Oh, God.
in the city, so we had emoji poo hats. And our guy got a plunger, so it was like a staff at sanitary. But yeah, it's a really good time. Even if you don't want to paddle, come out and cheer.
Excellent.
It starts at 9 o'clock at St. Hanson Park. Need any other info, just let me know.
Well, send me something for our socials, we'll put it on.
Nerves, you should put a boat together.
Crazy, if I had enough bandwidth, I'd love to do that stuff.
Thank you, Shane.
Tom's such a tough boss, he keeps me busy all day long.
That could be our paddle update.
That's it, that worked just fine, I was water based, so thank you.
And welcome to George Topple, Union Township
Thank
trustee
you.
who joined us late. Our next meeting is November 16th. Does anybody else have anything else? Does this time and day work for everybody?
It's worth this, well, day might, but it's 1:30 or not 10 o'clock a better time for people? Does it matter?
Does it matter?
10 is better for me.
What's better?
10, morning's always better.
Well, the problem is with the afternoon, people are already kind of in the other world, especially when it's nice. So we might actually move this to 10, just be on the lookout for that.
There used to be, there was some other, and there was a land use.
The EMPC used to be in.
Oh, is that what it
Yeah,
was?
they're not anymore, so.
Yeah, that's why we pushed it to 1:30, as I recall,
Yeah, I don't have the history of that.
my recollection.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Our people, your people.
All right, sounds good. If there's nothing else, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe holiday weekend.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Is that a minute?
Oh, yeah.
Restretch.